Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, we'll wait another 2 minutes. Just if anyone else in the gang wants to join. If Bill wants to join, if Jonathan wants to join. We will see. I want to make sure no one sent me some sort of message but I think everything should be okay. Okay. And Jonathan is the same. Great. Sandy, I saw you enjoyed the conversation Jacob had with the rabbi.
I did.
Short conversation, but very nice nonetheless. I'm sorry, I was mumbling. I was just blessing before I was drinking. Maybe next time I'll say it loud. You guys can answer amen. And Antonio, are you with us? I'm assuming that means yes.
All right, I'm here.
Your wife is not joining us this week.
No, maybe the next one.
No pressure. And thanks for your notes that you sent me. Much appreciated, to be discussed later on. I guess before we get started, also apropos with the subject, I hope that this evening's Torah study should be in the benefit and in the name of all our families that are sick or in trouble, of course, and specifically all the captives, all the soldiers, all the innocent civilians on both sides, both the Arab and Palestinian wounded innocents and the Israeli wounded innocents. And we hope that God gives wisdom and foresight to our soldiers, so when they are endeavoring in such dangerous worlds, that they do so with clarity of thought and with no malice. It's obviously horrible when there's so much bloodshed in the world. So let us all hope and pray for better times. Please God. Okay, let's get cracking. Let's do it. Chapter 5, preservation of human life, the prohibition of bloodshed, right? We don't want to have bloodshed, or in Hebrew, lo tirtzach, in one of the 10 commandments. And here we have, in the positive, the preservation of human life, as we've been seeing constantly. We try to bring in the positive. And we have a verse of the year: whoever spills the blood of the human being, through a human being, his own blood shall be spilled. For in the image of God he made the human being. Right? And then we have another: thou shalt not murder, like we just said in the 10 Commandments, famously enough. So first off, we should recognize that we should just clarify that those verses are not talking about Jews. Rather, they're talking about all humans, right? So this is not inclusive for us. We're like, yeah, it's open season. It's the purge with regards to the rest of the world. Rather, we sanctify all life. And we are told, of course, that one who saves one life as if he saved an entire world, in a certain sense, because we also recognize the potentiality in that one individual, the kids he could have, the effects he could have, the Torah he could teach. So there's a whole world in each individual. We want to, of course, take that very seriously. One other note that I think is worth stressing is we have over here, thou shalt not murder. And usually in the English translations, it's thou shalt not kill. However, killing, I think it's the mistake to use that term, because sometimes killing is needed. We always want to avoid murder if it's illegal or immoral, but that doesn't mean that like all killing is evil, right? There's a place for killing. So a very unique, specific, and ideally we don't want to be in that spot. But there is a place for killing. What we don't want is thou shalt not murder, right? Not that thou shalt not kill. All right. And can you guys see, while I'm rolling this right now, okay, great. Rabbi Akiva said, a human being is precious since he's created in the image of God, right? So everyone is God's child. We're all made in his image. Ashrei Adam Shenotzar B'Tselem is in Hebrew, like I guess here it's even precious, but it's he's glorified because he's made in God's image. Rabbi Akiva, according to even some, he was a convert himself, according to some opinions. Definitely one of the heavy hitters of the Jewish world with regards to our sages. I was talking about it yesterday during Pirkei Avot, how he, as an individual, he really was sort of like the Facebook of its time with regards to Torah, really creating like a whole network, opening up different schools, expanding out. He had famously 12,000 sets of students, as in 24,000 students altogether. He is seen as the father of the Torah of Israel in a certain sense. Obviously, we have Moses, which is the rabbi, but there is this. There are these similarities between Jacob and Rabbi Akiva. Jacob is called Ukba some places in the Talmud, and as Rabbi Akiva is also called Ukba. And Jacob marries a woman named Rachel, as we know, and Rabbi Akiva marries a woman named Rachel. And Jacob he works for a period of time, and then he gets duped by Laban, and he has to work another period of time. And Rabbi Akiva famously, his wife told him to leave to go study the Torah, and he left, and then he came back, and he heard her talking to her friend by the window saying, I would be okay if he did another, the same amount of time. So he went and doubled the amount of time he learned again. And his students ultimately met their end due to internal strife and fighting. And famously, we know the sons of Jacob had internal strife as well. So our little Jacob Federecci in this corner, he might not like my interpretation, but it's less about was Rabbi Akiva's wife actually named Rachel or not. It's more about that the Talmud is focusing on this pattern that they want us to recognize who Rabbi Akiva was and its similarities to the patriarch Jacob. So yes, he was married, but it wouldn't shake my tradition or my belief if his wife's name was Jessica at the end of the day. Right? Fairly unpopular Jewish name, but yeah. So that's just a little tidbit on Rabbi Akiva. All right, Jonathan. I hope all is well, and it's good to see you, sir. Number 2, Rabbi Akiva said, "And you shall love your fellow as yourself," or famously, as the Christians say, "Love your neighbor as yourself." But it's not neighbor; it's v'ahavta l'reacha, right? So this is really a much closer and intimate relationship than just the neighbor. And this is also saying that we want more from the individual as seeing someone else as, oh, this is a neighbor and someone that lives in proximity to me. We're saying more than that. We're saying you should see them as your fellow, right? Less the fact that whether he's your neighbor or not, more about there's a kinship between you guys. This is a great Torah principle, as he tells us over here. So obviously it's very hard in a certain sense to love your fellow as you love yourself. I might love deep tissue massages, right? And this other guy may hate that, right? So it's much harder it's very hard to know what someone loves ultimately. And we should strive to do the best we can to try to ascertain and understand where this other person is. And we should treat him ultimately the way we want to be treated. And again, the concept of love is very difficult, what that means. So at the very least, the minimum would be to treat him the way you want to be treated. Sometimes that might be considered love. Other times that just may be considered you're being very gracious, you're being very nice. But that is at the minimum what we could be doing. Mm-hmm. just for us to, again, to recognize God is looking to us, has us as partners, right? Together with him. And he's not looking to, we're not looking over here for, as we said many times, it's v'chai bahem. God is not looking for people to be playing around with concept of murder and death. So in general, again, that's like the context. I saw Antonio said that this is going to be a good one. I'm assuming he doesn't mean because like he loves murder, but like Dexter. But it's important just to frame how, like, while we're going to get into details of here, this is not something we want to be focusing on too much. Okay. The life of a human being was given by God, and no one has the authority to nullify it. Therefore, whoever takes someone else's life or his own violates the commandment of the Creator. The punishment of murder is execution by the court. So here again, right? God wants us as a partner. He's not looking us to die. He doesn't want us to kill ourselves, of course, and he doesn't want to kill anyone else. Just specifically to talk about this unfortunate situation of suicide, obviously frowned upon. Generally speaking, what was done in the very far past was if someone committed suicide, he wouldn't be buried with the rest of the community or the people of his family, right? So that's obviously a very big shanda. However, this punishment is really not done anymore. We don't remove people from the cemetery. Some argue saying that in his last second of suicide, he must have changed his mind, right? He must have regretted what he was doing, and that's why there was repentance in that last second. Potentially, obviously, if there's if this is due to some sort of mental instability, or so, then there's obviously it's much easier to understand and bring him back into the fold, because he's not doing this out of his own accord. Rather, he is out of control at this point. But even the person that was sane and was just in a very bad place and decides to do this again, the punishment, not being buried in the cemetery, is more of a deterrent. But we're not actually looking to do that. And to clarify this last sentence over here about that, the punishment of murder is execution by court. So what does that actually mean practically? Because people get murdered all the time, and we don't want to know that the courts are just off with his head for all these people. So there is a famous Gemara that talks about how a deadly court, a deadly Sanhedrin would sentence someone to death once every 70 years. Right? So it was a very, very rare phenomenon to happen. Part of this is also because you need a unanimous verdict from 23 judges when you're dealing with murder. And part of the conditions, for example, would be someone comes and says, I murdered X, I murdered Joe. They would say, well, were you aware that you were murdering him? Yes. Were there 2 witnesses? Yes. Did those witnesses warn you? Yes. Were you aware of them? They go through this whole list of questions. And ultimately, if he answers yes to all of them, the Gemara gives another example where it says, and if he answers yes to everything, he must be insane. And that's why we still don't murder him, because like only a crazy person would say yes to all these things and knowingly put himself in this position. But the point again is that the Sanhedrin would be very, very, very careful with doing such an act. And I mentioned this in the past also, just with regards to the lashes that the Beis Din would do as well, which to us seems quite archaic. Even then, the lashes were never for embarrassment, right? So if someone would start to cry or soil himself or faint during the lashes, then the lashes would stop, because there's no point of, we're not here to embarrass you in front of all these people. It's here to teach a lesson. Number 4, Tony, you want to take this guy?
The prohibition of murder applies to an act committed directly, indirectly, or by an agent. Even though the punishment of execution by a court is reserved for someone who murders directly, someone who murders indirectly is still a murderer, and his sentence is determined in heaven.
Right. So ultimately, even though there are some, if we look at the footnotes over there are some that say that he still could get judged by a court. And obviously today we have our court systems that deal with these, manslaughter and in the various degrees. It's more about the indirectly and directly over here. I want to just focus on the indirectly. There is a sense though, which is it's less that I really didn't notice and I couldn't have known and this horrible mistake happened. But what if I am just being careless, right? Like car accidents, right? If I'm texting and driving, right? Is that still considered indirectly at that point? Because I could have known better. I could have been more careful. So these are things that we have to really, really take into consideration, which is, yes, we don't mean it, but with a lot of our actions that we do, we already have intentionality there. And we're already moving the goalposts the second we start being reckless or, I didn't get an early night's sleep that night, but I knew I had a very long drive. So did I want to murder someone? No. But was I already endangering myself when I was doing that? The answer is yes. And as that starts becoming more and more, once I start becoming more and more careless, or I could have created more safeguards, then it starts becoming less indirect and more direct. Obviously, the intentions are different, but as far as our relationship with God and how He sees us, we have to recognize that those things are also going to be taken into consideration. This death sentence is determined by heaven is called karet, which means you are severed from the lifeline. It's a horrible sentence. Having said that, even with regards to this sentence, there were some that say that this sentence is only relevant once you're 21 years old and over. And then some that said it's not relevant at night, right? Because at night, the evil inclination, it's sort of things are hidden and you feel more of an urge to try to pull deeds like this in the moonlight when you're not being seen necessarily. So there's a sense also where the Torah is trying to be very understanding and meet people where they are in a certain extent. There's a high demand, but there's still a loving and understanding Father as well. Number 5, a national government may exact punishment even for a murder, even for a murder that does not require punishment according to the letter of the law, right? So that is obviously we all live in cities and countries where obviously this happens every day. So this is a concept called dina de malchuta dina, which is in Aramaic. In Hebrew, it would be din de malchut din, and in English, it would be the law of the kingdom, of the monarchy, or the rulership, is the law of the land. Now, of course, we need this because, a king, a government needs to be able to control evil at a certain point, right? We have something crazy happening. We need to be able to stop this right away. The prerequisites, of course, are that we have a moral system, that we have a moral king, right? So all those things would need to be into play for us to be able to accept such a ruling by such a government. An example of this would be, let's say, in Israel, the death sentence of Eichmann, the Nazi, right? So that's the only death sentence that Israel ever carried out, and his ashes were then scattered outside in international waters, so it wouldn't even be in Israel. There is talk in Israel right now, since October 7th, to try to bring back some of these, to reinstate a death sentence again to some of these terrorists, which I'm sure would be a very, again, it's more, I think, it's very dramatic, obviously, to see something like that. But, and obviously in the States, you guys have the death penalty as well in some of your states. But the point is that this is still, so halacha recognizes the need of governments, again, to be able to be flexible and deal with these issues in their society. And that's why they allow them some sort of wiggle room with regards to making these kind of sentences, right? But again, we need to have law and order, but it needs to be through a moral prism. Number 6, included in the prohibition of murder is an abortion of a fetus and mercy killing, euthanasia. Like, I don't know if like you guys, as a child, when I heard euthanasia, I also just thought it was youth in Asia. I didn't understand what the big deal was. But okay, so abortion, heavy topic. We don't have to get too deep into it right now, but there are various opinions in classic Jewish form. Most, I would say, don't categorize it as murder, depending when this is happening. Right? There's Judaism has its own. It has like its first 40 days. They have their own when the nerves start growing, when they decide that it's actually considered life. But regardless, this is something that you want to be asking your doctor about, because he's a doctor, speaking to your rabbi as well. And then together, you, your doctor, and your rabbi see in this specific position what we're talking about. And there are things called din rodef, which means if the baby is going to harm the mother, if the baby is going to have an extremely difficult life. And even in there's different gradations of how we decide that. But generally speaking, this is something that is possible. With regards to euthanasia, so also, I wonder what they say over here, number 39, because I was going to say that it's only in extreme cases, but it would be interesting, over here in note 39, they tell us, Mishnah Torah, Rotzach, okay, he just gives us a general footnote over here and doesn't give us any clarification about it, but it is almost never allowed. I would say famously, there is the story of the mass suicide in Masada. Masada is a stronghold built by Herod. He also built Herodian. It's these mountains with like a very flat top. And during one of the revolts against the Romans, there are Jews that went up there and to seek refuge. And they were there for a while, and they really gave the Romans a run for their money. At some point, the Romans managed to build this ramp, sort of, and to breach the walls. And at that point, it was decided with all the members that were still left over there to have a mass suicide instead of being caught and tortured or forced to convert. The Torah or the sages never came out saying like, and this is the ideal, this is awesome. However, we did understand that in some senses, maybe it makes sense to, in some cases, in extreme cases like this, again, this is not something that's pushed or recommended, but there was a sense where this wasn't called out necessarily. Rather, this was just seen as a very dark time in our history. Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. 7. There are cases where abortion of a fetus is permitted, especially during the first 40 days. Okay, there you go, 40 days of pregnancy. And or if the life of the mother is in danger or such issue arise, a rabbi who's familiar with them should be consulted. Okay, so this is sort of doubling up on what we said. Let's take a look, though, at footnote 141 and 142. So 141 tells over here, okay, so, or a Noahide sage trained to make determinations in this matter. All right, so again, this is a beautiful version where we see that the Torah is asking the Noahides to engage with it, right? Find, like, it could be that culturally the rabbi is not going to be appropriate to be talking to the Indian Noahide, the French Noahide, and they want to have their sages that are aware of what's happening in their culture, what's happening with their government, what's happening with their in the medical field over there. So here too, rabbi is in a certain sense is a placeholder to sage, right? Whether it be a Jewish sage or a Noahide sage. 42, because of the proliferation of differing laws regarding this matter. Okay, so why do we need to bring in the doctor? Like we said in number 6, because these things vary, right? We're not expecting the greatest rabbi in the world to necessarily be a fantastic doctor, right? There's just anecdotally the story about, I believe it's about, I want to say it's Rav Soloveitchik, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but his wife was diagnosed with cancer, and they say he did like a 1 week deep dive into the literature and then was having like deep conversations with the doctors about like how to move forward, right? Because he did internalize the medical information out there, and that, so again, but he was a titan, and he was very unique to be able to someone to consume medical information and then actually start talking about it with some sort of level of confidence. Okay, number 8. It is forbidden to actively end the life of someone suffering from a disease, but it is not necessary to fight to keep him alive. Administering medication to lessen the pain is permitted as long as it's not direct cause of death. The moment death is ascertained, it is permitted to disconnect life support systems. Okay, so again, these are very technical, and I hope none of us have to be in these positions, of course. So here we see the difference between the passive and the active, right? It's very important. The Torah is aware that you could be like, listen, I'm being passive right now, but I'm aware that I'm being passive. Am I really being active? The Torah still wants there to be like the words we say and the actions we say have meaning. It's important that you're not actively doing this, and that means something. And also what we see over here is the pain management is up to a point, right? So I could give him more and more, not Novocaine, that's for your teeth.
Morphine.
I could be giving more and more morphine. And, but at some point, if I keep on upping those doses, right, it could start turning deadly. And you'd be like, well, it's death due to pain management. So no, we're not looking for loops or like hacks to try to do this. The attitude is yes, relieve the pain. No for killing him, even if it's coming completely out of love. 9. Even in situations where it's permitted, according to the letter of the law, to discontinue treatment of a patient near death, it remains forbidden until the moment of death to disconnect any life support system or respirator, or to withhold any food or drink. In any situation where doubt arises, 3 people should be consulted: the patient, insofar he's able to participate in the discussion, a doctor, and a rabbi. And I'm assuming at 144, it probably says a Noahide sage. Determine or terminally ill according to halakha. No, it doesn't, but I'm assuming a Noahide sage would make sense here as well. So again, this is it gets a little complicated over here because there are some places where you could potentially stop treatment, right? So we're saying over here, so it's permitted to discontinue this treatment near his death. We would have to see when that is exactly. We'd have to discuss with the doctor exactly when that is near his death. But we have to take that into consideration, of course. Again, just to zoom out for a second, and we hope to never have to deal with these situations, the Torah is basically letting you know that life is extremely, extremely valuable. And while we're very sensitive to the family members that are suffering, seeing their loved ones suffer, we still have to see their life as paramount, and really only in extreme situations get involved and try to quicken this experience, so to speak. Number 10, removal of organs from a dead person for transplant purposes after cessation of the heart activity or brain death is permitted by law and even desirable. Donation of an organ such as a kidney for transplant for a healthy person that does not endanger the donor is permitted and even desirable. One second. I wanted to see over here, or brain death. I want to see with the note 146 over here. 146. According to the ruling of the chief rabbin of Israel, a person who is brain dead is officially dead in every aspect. Okay, so that would be according to the ruling with regards to brain dead. Yes. Now, with regards to what they're talking about, organ donors over here. So there's something that is fairly common in Israel. It's called an Eddie card that a lot of people sign. And the Eddie card is if I'm in a car accident, they see that in my wallet or they has it on their computer and they know off the bat they could take my organs and pass them on. You cannot decide where your organs go, right? It's anonymous. There are some private clinics that let you donate, like you could donate a kidney to your brother. There has been some controversy with some private clinics where people say, I want to donate my kidney, but only to a Jew, for example, because it's private. there's like a little less control over that. But obviously, if it's done through the public organizations, it goes to first come, first serve, right? Whoever needs it, it should go to it. And the Torah doesn't give us an issue with doing that. You could, of course, donate a body part or an organ to a Gentile to save his life. That's obviously fantastic. There are some rabbis that disagree with this, mainly from the ultra-Orthodox communities, and they have a hard time with doing this, of course. But ultimately, it's seen as a tremendous act of kindness. You have people that donate kidneys while they're still alive, of course, right? They donate one of their kidneys if they could do it. And again, if one could do so, and one knows that he is mitigating the risks, and he's doing so in a safe manner, it is a beautiful, beautiful a gift, and definitely desirable. 11. It is permissible for a doctor to perform surgery, even where risk is involved, if the purpose is to save a patient's life. So very straightforward, very understandable. We would ask, how is he performing the surgery, right? What if he's going to kill me? What's going to happen? So the attitude is like, you got to live your life. We got to trust the doctors at the end of the day. This also relates to a father's commandment to teach his son how to swim. And in a certain sense, teaching to swim doesn't necessarily, you could look at it as literally teach him how to swim, but you could see it also as teach him how to survive, right? Teach him how to live, teach him how to, so the goal is to try to obviously be pushing life. We don't want to necessarily be putting people under the blade, but of course, unless it's to save someone's life. Someone who kills by mistake, this relates to one of the first sections we read, because of carelessness, is exempt from the death penalty. But if one who killed by accident thought the murder was permissible, that person will, in fact, be punished for murder, right? So here too, if someone kills someone by mistake, I want to just see if we're going to talk about this soon. If they talk about sanctuary cities over here. How do they not mention that over here? Yeah, refuge city, not sanctuary city. Okay, so I'll touch upon that soon, or we'll touch upon that soon. So this is also fairly straightforward. So we're saying again, he's exempt from the death penalty because of carelessness, but then it starts coming up like what we just said. If by accident he thought the murder was permissible, right? So that becomes problematic. What does that mean? He thinks it's permissible, right? Like, I think it's okay for me to text while I'm driving. Why was that permissible? It was never permissible for you to get yourself in that position or in that situation. I thought it was permissible for me to drive without seatbelts on with, my kids sitting in the front. So it's more than you're just being, it's more than you're being careless. It's at that point, you're thinking the actions you're doing are permissible. And then again, you're sort of in gray water leaning towards murder at that point. Okay. It is. We'll touch again about what are the ramifications also of murder that happens specifically just by mistake, and I wasn't doing anything wrong, but we'll get to that shortly. It is permissible to participate in war as a soldier of the state, right? So this is obviously we're dealing with this right now, of course, and how are we doing this, right? How is this not killing, ultimately speaking? That's the first question we should be asking ourselves. Now, it's like we said earlier, the doctor could be risking your life if it's to save your life. So here too, we could be killing if it's to save others, if it's to save civilization. I'm obviously biased over here, but the American, if it's the American Armed Forces, right? Israel Army is called the IDF, right? It's the Israeli Defense Force. It's defense first. We're not looking, the whole ethos of the army is not to attack, conquer, kill. Rather, it's protect, preserve. And if that means I needed to kill someone, so be it. But it's because I'm coming from a defensive position, because I'm trying to preserve life as well. We want to avoid war if it's possible. And we see this also with Moses, where he has to first go and call out to peace to the other nations around him, because the attitude is we're not looking for war. We're ultimately looking to have peace. And obviously we have to take those things also into consideration. Like I started this with, we hope that our soldiers, right, we have horrible incident where 3 of the hostages managed to escape, and unfortunately they were killed by friendly fire. And first of all, the mother of one of these soldiers went to meet with all the soldiers of this unit that mistakenly killed him, and she told them not to worry and they should be strong and there's no hate towards them. So she's obviously a hero. And if people think the Israeli soldiers are heroes, you have to realize there are all these women. There are also women that are fighting in Gaza as well, but there are all these women that are home right now with kids that haven't seen their husbands in months and dealing with failing businesses and kids wetting their beds and a lot of anxiety. So they really are heroes. So we're saying it's permissible to be a soldier, and obviously for the right reasons, that makes sense. One would argue, like, whatever is happening in Vietnam, right, or in the Viet Cong, was that appropriate for a soldier to be there? Is that a worthwhile battle? Now, the soldier himself could potentially be exempt, because he could say, listen, like we said earlier, Dina de Malchuta Dina, right? This is part of my government. They decided this was a just war, so that's what I'm doing. So then that's between God and the leaders of that country to see what's what. But as far as a soldier, unless he sees a black, this is a metaphorical black flag waving above, as in if they come and say, just go around killing these children, then they should obviously decide to say no and risk being sent to jail, because that would obviously be not permissible. Number 14, it is permissible for a soldier about to be captured to kill himself if he suspects that his captors will torture him. Horrible things to think about. There is a code for this in the army called the Hannibal Directive. Hannibal Directive is during a few other wars with Gaza, there was like these sinkholes. These terrorists would just pop out of the floor and like grab soldiers and grab them inside. And the attitude was that if that happens, you run after and you kill the soldier. You shoot towards the terrorist, but you also kill the soldier. Then the army decided that they're not going to do this. And it was back and forth. If it's a soldier that has a tremendous amount of information, can we let him get captured? Is he putting other people's life in risk? So horrible to think about. Here we have a halachic decree with this regard, that we say that this could happen. And this goes back again to Masada, right? Like we said about, like, we obviously never want something like that to happen, but in those circumstances, again, it's not encouraged, but it's accepted. I do want to see what they note here on note 51. Bereshit Rabbah, Parsha 34. It is learned from the incident of King Saul falling on his sword. Right, so King Saul and his son, he asks his sword bearer to give him his sword. He kills himself. He doesn't want to be, he knew at the time if he's going to be captured by his enemies, they would torture him. They might not kill him and drag him around for a while. So this is what King Saul did. And we learn from that in that sense, again, it's not encouraged, but was accepted in those circumstances. Number 15, anyone who is threatened that if he does not kill another person, he will be killed, is not permitted to kill, even at the expense of his own life. So we've already done a different version of this earlier on. All right, we have the 3 cardinal sins that the Jews have. There's different opinions, again, with regards to the Noahides, but again, we have 613 mitzvahs. The chai behem, we want to be living through them. Our blood is not better than anyone else's blood, right? It's not more red. Our soul is not better than the other person's soul, and that's why it's just not permitted to ever do this. And the reason they talk about like the color of the blood also is like, you might think, listen, this guy, he was like a great rabbi, right? So like maybe his blood is more red than mine, right? Or this woman, it's Mother Teresa over here, like she's fantastic. So the attitude is no, that's for God to decide. And between both of you, you can't, through the blood, you're not going to be able to know who did something better or worse. And that's why you should assume that you are just as great. And that's why you can't be just killing people willy-nilly for that purpose. 16. It is permissible for a Noahide to engage in idolatry or illicit sexual relations if he is forced to do so. He does not need to give up his life rather than comply, right? So these are the two other cardinal sins that's for Noahides. Seemingly, they're permissible. I would notice 153 over here says, okay, or see above chapter 3, paragraph 16. 16 over here, yeah. So so the Rambam holds, I believe, if I remember correctly over there, that even if there's if it's very intense financial loss, then he's also permitted to do idol worship, right? And like, it's not considered death, but if right now I'm going to be homeless with nothing, I'm not going to have any food, I won't be able to take care of my family. So the Rambam was more open to being more lenient with regards to idol worship. Number 17. Am I going too fast, by the way, Jonathan, Sandy? Okay. Number 17. A person is permitted to save himself from someone who is pursuing him to kill him by killing the pursuer if there is no other way to save himself. But if he can save himself by injuring one of the limbs of the pursuer, he is not permitted to kill him, but only injure him. Right? So it's beautiful in this sense that the Torah, while telling you to protect yourself, is also saying, but if you can, also value the life of the would-be murderer. The verse is, Haba lehorgecha, hashkem lehorgo. One that is coming to kill you, rise up earlier and kill him. Right? That would be, that's what the general provision is saying over here. We, of course, have these, I mean, I don't know if it's real or not, but yeah, I'm sure people heard about this crazy court case that like a burglar came into the house and tried to rob the house, but he fell on a knife and then he sued the owner. Like, why does he have knives outside? Like some crazy situation like that. But generally speaking, we want to make sure that our civilians are, of course, safe. I'm just going to read through 18 as well, and then we'll talk about it because they're connected. A passerby who sees someone pursuing someone else in order to kill him, but cannot save the person being pursued merely by injuring the pursuer, is allowed to kill the pursuer as well, right? So Sandy's walking down the street. She sees Jonathan running after me, about to kill me. Sandy sees like, there's no way, I'm not strong enough to take this guy down physically. I'm not saying you're not strong enough, Sandy. Maybe you are, no judgment. Women could wrestle. But you decide instead to throw a rock at his head, right? Because like, you're like, this is the move. So we're saying if that's what if after your assessment, that was your only option, then seemingly it is allowed for you to do so. So again, what we're being told over here is saving lives is the ideal, right? Number one, starting with your own life or the innocent. And then if possible, even the murderer, right? So we want to try to cause the least amount of damage. In the army, we are trained to, we say this line in Arabic, wakaf, wala ana batuhak, which says stop, or I'll shoot. That's the first thing I say. Then I shoot bullets up to the air. Then I shoot bullets near him. Then I shoot bullets towards his legs. And only if I can't, do I aim to kill. So we are being told the same thing by our sages as well, that we must take this into consideration. This makes me think, this would also be in a certain way different than, and you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, in Christianity, I think there's still more tolerance. Would I be correct about this, Jonathan?
I don't know.
I think about Batman, who I'm a very big fan of. Many comics I've collected over the years. And however, Batman has his rules, right? That he's never going to kill, right?
Yeah.
And it creates like a lot of drama, right? It creates drama between Robin and Batman. This Robin comes back to life and it says, but like, I didn't tell you to kill everyone, just kill the Joker, right? He's crazy. He's insane. He killed me. He took me from you. Why won't you kill the Joker? Batman says, like, if I do that, I'm just like them. And if I do that, like, I'll never be able to go back. So Judaism doesn't look at that that way. They'll look at it being like, no, Batman, you should kill the Joker, right? He's killed thousands of people after that, and every time you don't kill him, you're not doing anyone any favors, and you don't turn into the monster if you're saving lives. So while I love Batman, I think that is like a very Christian mindset where it's like it's constantly showing the other cheek.
Turning the other cheek, yeah. I don't know that there's a hard and fast rule, but I think that probably most of Christianity I've been exposed to would be more pacifist than this.
Right. So less so. We have a more violent Batman. This Batman kills. Number 19. If two people are walking in the desert and one person has enough water to save himself alone, he is not obligated to give any water to the other person since his life takes precedence over that of another person. Right? So we have conflicting values over here. Now, we already spoke about this in a certain sense. We were talking about the kidneys, right? If I could donate my kidney, how am I not putting myself at risk, right? If I see someone drowning, can I jump in and save him? Or am I maybe there's a strong current, right? Maybe again, I'm putting myself in risk. So, and it makes sense that my soul obviously takes priority, but then there's a game. If it's little to no risk, right? Then I could give him some of my water because I'm not risking my life. If there's moderate risk, then it's up to me. I'm not required to give him my water, but I'm allowed to give him my water if I want to. If it's high risk, I can't. I did mention how the blood not being more red in different cases. However, in this case specifically, if it's my choice, the other version was like either I kill the other person or they're gonna kill me. I'm not gonna kill this other person. But if I could decide for myself to see if this person is a great man, and I know it's not for certain that I'm going to die, I could decide to preference him in this case and say, you know what, there's some amount of risk, but there's also an upside over here if you survive. So in this case, there might be some leniency with allowing this person to do it. This, of course, to me, reminds me of, I don't know what country this happened in, but that famous soccer team that crashed their plane and then they had to eat each other. I know some died and the other ones ate them, right? So we should never be tested. But I guess obviously in that case, of course, you're not allowed to eat a human body and you can't kill a person, but to save one's life, in that case, seemingly would be permitted. Number 20, Jonathan, do you mind taking this?
The Rambam wrote, even though there are sins that are worse than shedding blood, none of them destroy civilization like shedding blood. Neither idol worship nor, needless to say, illicit relations are as bad as shedding blood. Idolatry and illicit relations are sins committed between a human being and God, whereas shedding of blood is a sin between one human being and another. And anyone who commits this sin is completely wicked, and no divine commandment or good deed he fulfilled can make up for this sin or save him from strict judgment.
So first of all, I know that's what it says over here, but from our short interaction so far, I'm sure you guys recognize that there's no such thing as no repentance. There's always a way back to God. As God says, as we read on the Day of Atonement on Yom Kippur, Ad Yom Moto Achake Lo, till the day of his death, I will be waiting for him to repent. So God is always waiting. Of course, it comes at a very high cost to do repentance or tshuva. I wonder what it says in 157 over here, Mishnah Torah, Rotzech, right? So again, using very harsh words, that doesn't mean that he can't find repentance. I would just stress over here that we spoke, I believe we spoke about either last class or 2 classes ago about this split inside the 10 commandments, which are 5 are between man and God, and 5 are between man and his fellow man. And here we're seeing that God is sort of saying, I will deal with the relationship between you and me. But between you and your fellow man, you have to take this at the highest level of seriousness, because it is like we said earlier, man is made in my image, right? So this is my image walking around on this earth, and for you to take that life is a grave, grave, grave sin. But, so while this is very harsh, there is always room to repent, and that's not a wink for murderers to say like, Chezi just told us we can murder. So definitely don't murder, but there's always God, Dad is always waiting. 21, a person should not assault anyone, man or woman, whether an adult or a minor, whether by striking, injuring, or wounding the other person, or by seducing or raping the other person. So, of course, horrible, horrible, horrible. We would never want to do that as well. I should note that in note 158, even though this is not SPC anymore, physical punishment of a child for educational benefit is not included here. Even so, care should be taken not to strike a child as an expression of anger or any other negative character trait. And this is what the Rambam talks as well. The Rambam talks about how you need to sort of take a step back. You need to cool off. So said smack, let's say, from parent is only coming from educational purposes and not at all coming from being upset at the child. I'm not coming over here to tell people that they should employ corporal punishment. We obviously live in different generations. I received corporal punishment, and at no point did I think my dad was abusing me, and I love my dad very, very much. But times are changed, and this is something that I personally would not practice. Having said that, it is important, and I think the reason they exclude this is how important it is in Judaism structure, respect, and understanding that there's a tradition and these things need to be upheld. So speaking to a child, when we live today in a world where like everyone wants to be their kid's best friend and everyone wants to just tell their kid, yes, 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 that's not necessarily the attitude. You are a parent. You are here to educate. You are here to set boundaries. You are the boundaries. So we are being told over here that it's so how serious it is to afflict any sort of physical pain. But of course, in some places, it potentially could be permitted. I should mention over here again, which I think we mentioned with regards to respecting one's parents. Here too, you cannot make your father bleed. So wrestling, basketball, things like that, if it gets very intense, one has to do so very carefully. That doesn't mean father can't play basketball. He just can't play basketball against his son. Because that is, the Torah doesn't take that too lightly, causing your father to bleed, of course. Number 22, whoever strikes another person is called wicked, and striking a Jew is especially heinous. So obviously we don't want to be hitting anyone. And this is a problem we have in today's culture. There's a tremendous amount of violence and bullying in schools, and there really is no room for violence. But with regards to the Jews, the only reason this is stressed over here is the general attitude, which is Jews are the conduits of prophecy, and therefore Jews are hitting the conduit, right? So we don't want to be hitting the conduit. No one should be hitting anyone, obviously. So Jews are not. While yes, we're saying over here they're more special, no one should be hitting anyone. So I don't think we need a special verse for that. 23, it is permissible to kill animals that cause distress to people. And that doesn't mean if your neighbor doesn't like your chihuahua, that means you could just off it, right? We're not making those kind of invitations. However, Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was a prominent rabbi in America, had a ruling that, let's say, a fly or a mosquito, ideally try not to kill it. If you have to kill it, try not to use your hands. But if you have to, you can get rid of it. And then there's levels to that, like, I don't want malaria. I'm allergic to bees, right? So there's all those elements you have to take into consideration when doing that. Of course, the tiger's about to attack me. My son's playing with a pit bull. All those things would fall under that category. Again, it would be wise if the Cohens want to have me over for a meal and I know they have like 2 pit bulls, then I'm sort of bringing myself into that position of danger, right? So like maybe I have to ask myself why I'm going to the Cohens again. That's just a made up name, right? So anyone listen to this, the Cohens are all good. 24, it is forbidden to cause suffering to animals where there is no benefit to human beings, right? right? So here too, very gray. What is the benefit of human beings? I want my new slushy. So does that mean I just get to kill animals? No, it doesn't. It just means we need to be sensible, obviously, with these things, whether we see this in number 25. So before I get to number 25, in number 24, again, if they're benefit for human beings. So really it comes up to here about like medical trials, right? So if I'm doing any medical trials on bunnies or whatever, dolphins, so I could better figure out how to cure cancer. So yes, it's permitted. As technology advances, right now they've been using AI on dolphins, and they now find out that dolphins all have unique names and all speak different languages. So it may get more problematic if we end up finding that these animals are communicating at a much more intricate and deep level. But that'll bring other excitement to our life as well. So we'll see where that takes us. 25. It is permissible to kill animals for human benefits, such as food, clothing, or medical research, as long as unnecessary animal suffering is avoided. So you have to ask yourself about what's unnecessary. I don't have to eat burgers, right? My kids had McDonald's today. Like, was it necessary? I don't know. Rabbi Cook talks about how eventually we all move into becoming vegetarians, eventually. This goes along with the fact that Maimonides says that there will no longer be temple sacrifices in the third temple. Not everyone agrees with this. But you could see in a certain sense how, and we see even in the culture, vegans and vegetarians, while they annoy us all, we realize that in the culture, more and more people are taking on this sense of morality, right? They don't want to just be killing animals. They don't want to just be doing like this mass production of animals. Well, so I think that movement in the whole is positive. The former chief rabbi of Israel came out last year saying that engineered meat is not considered. We have in our dietary restrictions, we have meat and we have milk, and we can't mix them together. But he says that engineered meat wouldn't be considered meat necessarily, so you would be able to mix them together. There's a whole nother level of problems over there, which is called marit ayin, which means if someone sees it and it looks like a steak, he might think you're eating a steak, and that's another issue. But before getting into that, my point is that technology might allow us to move to becoming vegetarians while still enjoying the taste of carpaccio as we move forward. So that would be like the best of both worlds. I will also just mention with regards to sacrifice of animals. So there is the famous story of Elijah on the mountain of Carmel, and when he is battling the false prophets. And he says, ultimately, we'll decide who is the true prophet. You bring your sacrifice, I'll bring my sacrifice, and we'll see what's what. He also pours water on his altar to show how it's right. So when he brings his sacrifice, the sacrifice it says in one of these midrashim, he's very happy and he willingly Elijah sacrifices him, and the sacrifice is successful. And then the sacrifice of the false prophets complains to Elijah and says, it's not fair. Like, I am being used right now as a pawn for them, and that's not what I want. And Elijah tells him, don't worry, because even with your unsuccessful performance over here, you are still glorifying God, because they're still going to see the truth through your fail. And then the Midrash says that the sacrifice raised his neck and was like allowed himself to be killed. And the sense is that animals, if there's proper unification between man and human, there's a certain sense. And Joe Rogan talks about how, or the Indians, the Native Americans talk about how when they were hunting, it's like a very spiritual experience with them and the animal. So in a certain sense, if it's all happening through the circle of life, and the animal is wants to give himself up for like a higher cause, then that's sort of more desirable. And that's sort of the level of interaction we want to be having with sacrifices, which is not like I go into the store and take out like 100 cattle that I'm going to kill right now. It's more that I find the specific cattle that I also use to plow my field, and we used his milk. And now at the end of his cycle, he is now realizing that he's benefiting me in this way as well. So it's a more wholesome story, but some people could disagree with that as well, and I totally understand that. All right, 26. Moving on to proper conduct. As we always say, there are things that are commandments for the Noahides, and there are things that are proper conduct. Billy Ray, are you doing well? I'm sorry I didn't say hi yet.
Oh, yes, sir. How you doing?
Good. Praise the Lord.
So,
thank you. And we're very glad to have you here too, sir.
sorry I was so late, sir.
It's not your fault at all. And this time we went a little, well, actually we went late. So yes, you are pretty late, but again, no harm, no foul. And we'll continue next time. Okay.
Right.
Proper conduct. 26. There are those who prohibit Noahides from castrating males, whether human or animal. But this view is not accepted by all. Nevertheless, this prohibition is worthy for consideration, right? So ultimately, this goes back to life is for the future and is extremely important, right? If we're castrating animals and we're castrating humans, we are just ending the lifeline. So medical reasons, other reasons, sure. With regards to Noahides, we're seeing over here there's more leniency. Having said that, right, so this is a prohibition that is worthy of consideration. The way that comes down practically is Joe the Noahide right now that buys a dog, right? Ideally, knowing that this is not ideal, maybe he shouldn't be looking to get a dog that needs to be castrated. If he has a dog like that already, then obviously there's more wiggle room with regards to a Noahide with this sense if this needs to happen. Commonly accepted ethical standards obligate one person to save another one who is in danger, right? So I think even in the States, you guys have a law for this, like the bystander intervention law or something, which I think the whole Seinfeld crew goes to jail for, right? They don't help. They don't end up helping in the last episode. They don't end up helping that guy that's getting mugged, and they all get sent to jail. But so we could see that this is something that's already commonly accepted in the world. We don't want to see people being killed. We don't want to see people in danger. So we are being told to do this as well. This is also true about monetary harm as well. If you see your person's about to sign with some Bitcoin bro and he has no idea what he's doing in, you should act, you should speak to them, you should tell them to be very careful because we are there to make sure we protect each other and help each other as well. 170 as far as the footnotes over here. Right, for Jews, this is the mitzvah of don't stand idly by the blood of your fellow, right? So as we have in many cases, Jews have specific and direct commandments. For the Noahide right now, this is a derivative of other laws that we're learning from, or this is definitely recommended. Definitely, it's stressed by the fact that this was already accepted by the ethical standards in the world, more or less. 28. It is appropriate for a Noahide who killed someone by accident to exile himself to another city or country. At a time when city of refuge laws are in effect for Jews, a resident alien who kills accidentally exiles himself to such a city. Here we're using the term resident alien, like a ger toshav, which we spoke about, could also be a Noahide. A Noahide that's living in the land as well is considered a resident alien. So what is a city of refuge? There were 3 in Israel proper and 3 on the other side of the Jordan. There are also, the Levites did not get any land. However, the Levites did get 48 Levite cities. All these Levite cities were also considered refuge cities as well. They all doubled as refuge cities. And the refuge city is, the example the Torah gives is, I am in my forest and I am chopping lumber. And I pick up my axe, and the axe on top flies off and kills said neighbor, right? Completely by accident. I made sure I did everything I needed to do before. I wasn't careless. The guy was walking where he shouldn't be walking, and this happens, right? I killed him by accident. At that time, there was a sense where what if his son sees this happening, he gets red with rage and decides he's going to now kill me. The Torah, in a certain aspect, is recognizing that natural interaction might happen, and there's only so much blame we could put on the son in this case, because he just saw his father get murdered or killed in front of him. So there's all this rage. So we say we're going to build these cities of refuge, and we tell the murderer in this case, the killer, run to the city of refuge. And there has to be all over the roads, there has to be arrows saying this way to the city of refuge. And if he gets to the city of refuge before the other family members get to him, he is considered safe. No harm could come to him. However, he has to stay inside the refuge city until the high priest passes away. The Torah talks about how the wife of the high priest would go around giving the people of the refuge city treats and food because she would want to distract them from praying for the death of her husband, right? Because ultimately they need her to die, and that's what they would do. Another reason also why they need to be in this refuge city is we are being sensitive to the mourners, because you know what? They get it that Mr. Cohen didn't really mean it. We get that. But at those times, there's 100 of us in the neighborhood, right? Everyone knows everyone. I can't see Mr. Cohen every day after he just killed my wife. I don't want to see him all the time, or he killed whatever it is. And it's too hard for the family to see this guy, this so-called murderer, walking free right now. So the Torah is also being sensitive to them as well. There needs to be this place of separation. We need to know that there's a space where they could mourn properly. It's also demanding from the murderer to step up his game. You're going to moving to a new city where everyone's going to be looking at you now, right? So you better be on your best behavior. This means you have to be your best version of yourself as well. And in a certain sense, it is like a little exile, which is like a shakeup to yourself, to your mindset. So you need to confront this issue. Someone was murdered. Yes, you didn't do it purposely. Yes, you're not a bad person, but on your watch, life was taken. So for many reasons, this exile might be beneficial for you, for yourself internally, for the community. So there's reasons for this thing as well. Number 29. No one should injure himself or bring himself or others into dangerous situations in which there is no benefit, as occurs when someone drives at an excessive speed, right? So that would be the obvious option, right? Don't be driving at excessive speed because you're putting yourself and the others in danger. But we need to be honest with ourselves and ask, what would the Torah think about bungee jumping? What does the Torah think about parkour? What does it think about football, where now we know that creates a tremendous amount of brain damage? So the plain answer is, it is forbidden, right? You want to pick up a game of flag football with your friends. You want to do a little football with your boys after class, no problem. You want to sign up for a league where you're going to have a 250-pound man run into you as hard as he can into your head. You're asking for disaster. Parkour. Maybe you've seen 150 hours worth, 1,000 hours worth of videos on YouTube. If you try to jump from one rooftop to another and miss, you will die or you will break your leg. Right, so these are all things that the Torah is not interested in. We live in a culture today where it's like, oh wow, it's very cool to be doing things like this, or like, look, we're going cave jumping. So the Torah is, telling you maybe stay at home and read a book about the cave instead of deciding to jump right into it. Okay, how much is left of you? Okay, nice. So we'll wrap this up. 30. A guardrail should be built around a roof to avoid danger. And so too, preventative measures should be adopted concerning any potentially dangerous situation. So this is a famous law. This is also, and there's nothing we need to be ashamed of, this is the Code of Hammurabi talks about this as well, about needing to have this guardrail around your roof. So you'll see in many roofs in Israel, There are always like a rail on top. I'm sure this is true also in the States due to code, but obviously from a religious perspective as well, we also need to have this as well. Someone might go on your roof, not me. Someone kicks a ball, the ball falls on my roof. He goes into my building. He climbs up to the top floor, opens up the roof, goes on top, and then there's no banister over there. He falls. In reality, the door to the roof should really be locked, right? But this is giving us more of a general understanding, which is building codes, building guidelines. When you have babies, putting socket covers, right? Or baby proofing the house, car seats in cars. So we don't want to be choked by, bureaucrats telling us things that we have to do. Like in Israel right now, it's a law. Every new car has to have a feature in it that when you leave the car, it tells you to check the back seats, right? Because too many people were left in the back and they were killed, right? Now you could be saying like, why is the government be forcing me to get these stuff? That's like a separate conversation. But what the Torah is expecting from us is to use all those preventative measures and really take these things into consideration. Be aware of our surroundings. We're walking down the street and we see a pothole on the floor. We should call the municipality. We should let people know. It's up to us, right? If we don't call, if we ignore it, we say nothing, and the next day we hear in the news that a little kid fell inside, that's on us. We could have said something. We should be aware of this as well. Care should be taken, number 31. Care should be taken. You're still seeing the screen. Care should be taken not to place any obstacles on the road that could cause injury to any other person. Such obstacles should be removed from any location where passerby could sustain damage or injury. So like I just said, a ditch in the floor, those kind of issues, we need to take them very, very seriously as well. 32, according to commonly accepted ethical standards, this is the second time we're seeing this, or maybe the third time we're seeing this, which the rabbis over here are bringing in what already is the moral norm and attaching it into Torah requirements as well. Ethical standards: the prohibition of murder includes any behavior that diminishes the life of another, such as public embarrassment, insult, or even unfair competition in business. Okay, so also very, very interesting. So murder, we just expanded murder more over here. In Hebrew, it's called halbanat panim, making someone's face go white. In a certain sense, it's almost as murder, and the sense is his face went white because he was so embarrassed, all the blood left him. That's why his face went white. But and we can see this today, obviously, with canceling people in the cancel culture, what we do to people's reputations, what we do to their livelihood. This is akin to murder in some cases. And the Torah comes out against this in a very harsh manner. And, talk isn't cheap, like we just said. You need to be very careful with the blessings you say and the oaths you make. And even in burying someone is something that is very, very, very bad. And we should be very, very careful. And to recognize that this is, I talk to my children and I say, like, don't bully, right? But it's more than don't bully or don't talk about someone because, like, that's not nice. Don't do that because, look what this is. This is someone's life. There's someone's soul over here. We're affecting him. We could be creating a tremendous amount of trauma for this person. So we need to take it extremely seriously. No one should say anything about, by the way, about unfair competition in business. Just as an example that the Torah uses is, I have a pharmacy and now Billy opens up a new pharmacy right next to mine, right? So the Torah says, like, you can't do that. You are affecting their livelihood. You are moving business away from them. It's just not moral to act in that sense. And that kind of competition is, in a certain sense, that is a monetary murder at that point. Number 33, no one should say anything bad about another person, even if it is true. And even more so, should not tell lies about that person. I'm going to continue with 34 because it could seem a little confusing. It is permissible to publicize the bad deeds of an evil person in order that this person will not continue to cause damage to others in order to set him straight. And so, too, when there is a need to check someone's suitability for a certain position, it is permissible to ask about his history and circumstances. So if Billy Ray is reading just number 33, he's like, what are you talking about? I have a foster home. I bring people in. I got to know who's coming in over here. So 34 kicks in and we say, of course, You got to know if this guy's a rapist. You got to know if this guy's on like that register you guys have of sex offenders. So of course we need to take those things into consideration. We don't want them to create doing any bad or damaging anyone. However, when it comes to let's say dating right now, yes, I don't want to say it with a sociopath, but I hear that Cheryl wants to set a bill right now with Claire. And I've had bad experiences with Claire. Slow your roll. Okay, maybe Claire's changed. Maybe that was just you. Don't go out now bad-mouthing Claire because you just had that bad experience with her. And definitely, obviously, don't be telling lies about that person, obviously. But again, it's how important defamation is, how important is making sure that you are protecting someone's name, because in a name, that carries a lot of weight, both psychologically, monetarily, socially. So we have to be very, very, very careful with that. And again, this is just stressing how talk is not cheap. All right. At the end. 35. A person should not hate another person secretly in his heart without revealing to that person what, in fact, his feelings towards him. It is best, of course, that he should not hate him at all. So beautiful over here, but the Torah is recognizing you might hate him. We have a beautiful example of this with the Joseph and his brothers, right? And they told him that we don't like him. And Rashi, the commentary, famously says that was sort of a credit to them, that they wore their hearts on their sleeves. What they said is what they meant. And because of that, because at the very least there was dialogue, and that's what number 35 is saying over here. Hate is bad. We get that. But what's worse is no dialogue, because then is just destruction, right? And I spoke about this in, I think 2 weeks ago in the little weekly portion video I sent, where we could see with Adam and Eve, we have our first sin because there's bad communication between Adam and Eve. Then we see there's some sort of communication with Cain and Abel. They're calling each other brother, but it ends with death. And it goes on and on and on. But when it gets to Jacob and Joseph and his brothers, yes, they hated him, but they managed to move from hate all the way to love. And we even see that stress in the verses, because they say, now that our father Jacob is dead, maybe our brother Joseph only was protecting us and loving us because he wanted to appease our father. But now that our father Jacob is dead, he's going to come and get us. And Joseph goes to them and says, fear not, I love you guys. I'm not mad at you guys. It's all good. And the reason that was possible is because they never stopped talking. Even when they were hateful for each other, there was that communication. So here we say it's very, very important to not keep these things on your heart. They weigh heavy on us. I told this recently to my son about lying, how it weighs heavy on our heart, right? We don't want to be having this with us. 36. 36. Well, before I jump to 36, I'd also mention that on the Pirkei Avot class I gave, we also mentioned how God, when the Israelites passed the Red Sea, and then the Egyptians go through, the waters cover them over, and they find their demise. And the Midrash says that the angels were singing, were praising, and God gets very mad at them. He says, "My creations are floating in the water, dead, and you are rejoicing." Now, we argue that the Israelites, it was okay because they were directly involved with this. So like that was like a human reaction that they had. But for the angels that should know better, he says, why would you be happy when my creations are being killed? Right? So we're not trying to sow hate. We're not trying to send hate out there either, even for our enemies. We're ultimately trying to, yes, we want them to fail, but we're not hateful of them. 36, what is hateful to you? Do not do to anyone else. So this is a famous line that Hillel said. Yes, 184. Am I making that up? 184. Yeah, no, it doesn't say it over there, but I'm sure it's Hillel. So in a certain sense, this goes back to what we said earlier about like love thy fellow as you love yourself. However, we mentioned that was a little more difficult. Knowing what the other one loves is harder than knowing what the other one hates. It's more common that we share common things that we hate with regards to things we don't want being done to us. So at the very least, put yourself in that person's shoes. And we even say in Hebrew, it's al tadun adam al shetagia lekomo. Don't judge someone until you walk the mile in his shoes, right? And then the sages also say, and it's very rare that you're ever going to walk a mile in someone's shoes. So don't judge him, basically, because you're never really going to fully understand their background, their context, their story. So try not to judge them and try to see them in the best way possible. Last one, 37. Although wasting of seed is not explicitly forbidden to Noahides, it is still not an appropriate act. But for medical reasons or for fertility treatments, it is permissible. So the reason it's not recommended, for Jews, it's you can't. There too, for medical reasons, obviously you can. It's to save someone's life. But why this is not an appropriate act? Not because you're going to go blind or God is standing in the sky being mad at you. Here you are elevating your personal pleasure instead of adding pleasure to the world, creating more life, creating more joy in the world. You're just deciding to be egocentric, think about yourself and think about your own pleasure. And the Torah doesn't want that happening, doesn't want you focusing on that end. Yes, you could have a good drink. You could hang out with the boys. We're not saying someone can't enjoy himself, someone can't laugh. But if your life turns into only laughing and only becoming a comic, then that's not the ideal. So is there room and place for sexual pleasure? Of course, it's recommended. It's commanded to do so. However, participating in that act in a closed, sterile loop that is just for personal pleasure is obviously for Noahides and for the world, not an appropriate act. With that, we wrap up.